When it comes to tracking down the names of UFO whistleblowers, let me tell you folks, that's a heck of a tricky task. You don't want to know how many hours I spent today looking for names outside of the obvious. The things I do for all of you lovely humans. Speaking of which, question for you, who do you think is going to make today's list? Let me know in the comments and let's see if I can't at least slightly surprise you. Let's start at the very beginning of UFO history, well, modern UFO history, with the story of Captain Edward Rupel. And if you weren't familiar with that name before today, probably because I mispronounced his last name, it's time for a history lesson. He was a United States Air Force officer, probably best known for his involvement in Project Blue Book. You know, the formal government study of unidentified flying objects. UFOs? He is generally actually credited with coining the term UFO, by the way, just to replace the terms flying saucer and flying disc, because at the time they had become widely known because the military thought that was a little misleading because, well, it's more than just discs up in the sky. Before he was involved with Project Blue Book, this lovely man was the director of Project Grudge, which was in 1949, but afterwards when he was with Project Blue Book, he remained with that until 1953. He wrote that the Air Force's initial approach to the UFO question was tackled with organized confusion. In defending General Samford's press conference in July of 1952, which was right after the big UFO flap at the Washington National Airport, he wrote that the General's people had fouled up in not fully investigating the sightings, and I think most of us here would absolutely agree with that statement. UFO researcher Jerome Clark has said that most observers of Blue Book agreed that the Rupel years comprised the project's golden age, when investigations were most capably directed and conducted. He was open-minded about UFOs, and his investigations weren't like super public. After he retired, he wrote a book claiming that a secret government report called The Estimate of the Situation said UFOs were interplanetary in origin. Pretty amazing stuff, right? Well, no copy of the report has ever been found. Yep. You know, just gonna start off today with a possible government cover-up, because I'm nothing if not on brand. Hey, I'm always ready to poke holes in what governing bodies want to hide, because they shouldn't be hiding it. So in the book, Rupel detailed his time with the projects, and he offered his assessments of a couple of UFO cases. Turns out in 1956, a man named Donald Cahoe asked Rupel to, hey, maybe do you want to serve as an advisor to the newly created National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, otherwise known as NICAP? Rupel had recently suffered a heart attack, so he was like, not for me right now. Going back to the book, it shows that he held some not so great views of Cahoe and his early writings. He was like, you have your facts straight, but your interpretation is not really there. You're kind of sensationalizing the material and your mind reading, which I'm okay with mind readers. I have friends that are mind readers, but I get in a sciencey perspective, you might not want that. In what one paper referred to as a sudden death, Rupel succumbed to a heart attack on September 15th of 1960 at the age of just 37. Far be it from me to speculate about a man's death, but that's highly suspicious. Was it stress that killed him young? Or was it exposure to elements not of this earth? Maybe a combination of the two? Okay, moving on before I start sounding crazier than I already do. Are y'all familiar with Tim Gallet? He's an American oceanographer and retired Rear Admiral in the United States Navy. He worked for the U.S. Department of Commerce as the Acting Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and Acting Administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, otherwise known as NOAA for short. He is also, and this is where we come in today, a prominent member of the UFO community. He says he's seen footage of unidentified anomalous phenomena, which is UAP for short, which is the new word for UFO, and unidentified submerged objects while on active duty while he was in the Navy. He's also expressed support for David Grush's claims, don't worry, we'll talk about that more in a moment, and he's called for the destigmatization of the subject across science, the military, and the general public. He mentioned to a News Nation correspondent that there were attempts to cover up UFO sightings by members of the military. Turns out the planet has been visited by entities he described as non-human, and he absolutely believes that these intelligent beings are very real. You want the direct quote? I got it. We're being visited by non-human intelligence with technology we really don't understand and with intentions we don't understand either. That about does it. He mentioned that he once received a video containing the Go Fast video, you know, the one that shows the fighter pilot's encounter with a UAP, but the video got recalled. The military was like, shh, don't talk about it. He said that I learned now that these were occurring in training airspace and causing near mid-air collisions. So the safety issue is important, but the Navy didn't do anything about it. They actually pulled back the email from his computer on the secret network, which, cover up! To quote him again, he's like, this technology, we're still trying to learn about it, and it could give us an advantage in any military conflict. I guess that's a good reason not to disclose the nature of the technology, but he's like, still, it's about time that we do disclose that we are in contact with non-human intelligence. That's what needs to be put out there in the public. I couldn't agree more with this guy. He's also mentioned that it's important to talk openly about flight safety risks that go along with UAP encounters, which Yeah. It was recently announced that he's actually launching a probe into unidentified submersible objects, and in particular, a strange anomaly seen on the seabed off the coast of California. Turns out he spent the last 18 months interviewing dozens of sailors, submariners, military personnel, and members of the US Coast Guard, who all who say they have seen the unidentified craft in the water. So one incident was filmed by the USS Omaha off the coast of San Diego back in 2019, and that's when they saw a dark-shaped object moving quickly before splashing down into the water. Heck, if we want to go back in time, we all know about the Tic Tac incident. I've talked about it a lot. The little craft fluttering around. Sonar has revealed that there's an unusual trench on the seafloor, as if an object has crashed into a ridge and then skidded to a halt. So this lovely man is planning to send a remote-controlled submarine to the spot to see if there are signs of what caused the phenomena. The group he's a part of is calling for investigation into USOs to be made a national ocean research priority for the US government, and argue that underwater anomalies threaten maritime security. Okay, this next one might be a hot take. Bear with me here. Going back in time, April 3rd of 1949, popular, famous radio personality Walter Winchell broadcasted the claim that it had been definitely established that the flying saucers spotted at the time were guided missiles sent from Russia. In the response, the Air Force was like, and they also requested an FBI investigation into the claims. And this request was denied, but still. Look, I know, I said UFOs today, but here's the thing. If we're gonna give credit to people who are whistleblowers and are right about UFOs, we also have to give credit to the whistleblowers who threatened the government by debunking the false stories so the true ones could come to light. This guy knew his stuff. We should respect him and his legacy for it. Okay, here's the name everybody's been waiting for. David Charles Grush. I mentioned him a little bit before. Let's dive into it. He's a veteran of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or NGA, and a bunch of other places, and he served as a representative to the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force from 2019 to 2021. He was also the co-lead for UAP analysis and is representative to the task force led by the Department of the Navy under the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. He served as a Senior Intelligence Capabilities Integration Officer, and he had really high security clearance. This guy knew a lot. So he was the military equivalent of a colonel and has numerous awards and decorations for his participation in covert and undercover operations to advance American security. Long story short, he knows what he's talking about. He said that the recovery of partial fragments through and up to intact vehicles have been made for decades through to the present day by the government, its allies, and defense contractors. He said that the craft recovery operations are ongoing at various levels of activity and that individuals on these UAP programs have approached him in his official capacity and disclosed their concerns regarding a multitude of wrongdoings, such as illegal contracting against the federal acquisition regulations and other criminality and the suppression of information across a qualified industrial base and academia. A lot of folks who have vouched for David said his information was highly sensitive, providing evidence that materials from objects of non-human origin are in the possession of highly secret black programs. Even though locations, program names, and other specific data remains classified, the Inspector General and Intelligence Committee staff were provided with the details. Analysis has determined that the objects retrieved are of non-human origin based on vehicle morphologies, material science testing, and the possession of unique atomic arrangements and radiological signatures. The investigation was centered on extensive interviews with high-level intelligence officials, some of whom are directly involved with the programs I've been talking about, and they corroborated his information. He's pretty sure that this information has actually been illegally withheld from Congress to intentionally thwart legitimate congressional oversight of the UAP program, which, whoa! He's also filed a complaint alleging that he suffered illegal retaliation for his confidential disclosures. In his statements, he also claimed that UFO legacy programs have long been concealed within multiple agencies, nesting UAP activities in conventional secret access programs without appropriate reporting to various oversight authorities. According to the unclassified complaint, in July of 2021, he had confidentially provided classified information to the Department of Defense Inspector General concerning this withholding of information. Now, Christopher Mellon, who spent nearly 20 years in the US intelligence community and served as a lot of really important things, he's mentioned that, a lot of well-placed current and former officials have shared detailed information with him, including the location where a craft was abandoned and restored. Why haven't more folks come forward? Well, a lack of trust in the leadership of everybody. Also, there's the assumption that the United States alone has bullied other nations into maintaining secrecy for nearly a century. Because why not? Alright, last but certainly not least, I present to you Bob Lazar. He's an American businessman and physicist who was hired in the late 1980s to reverse engineer extraterrestrial technology, and his determination to tell the truth to the public at great risk to himself is admirable. He's worked on flying saucers, one specifically named the Sport model, which was manufactured out of a metallic substance similar in appearance and touch to liquid titanium. Apparently, the propulsion of the studied vehicle ran on an antimatter reactor and was fueled by the chemical element with atomic number 115. which you can't replicate that atomic element. He claimed to have worked at Area 51, and sadly there's been a massive government cover-up in recent history to try and discredit him. I'm talking erasing school history, work history, the works. Now, I get one institution losing records can be explained away logically as a clerical error, but more than that, little suspicious. And that's it for me once again, folks. I've been Alexa, your resident ooky spooky girly. See y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.